Hey everybody, Coach Sal here, episode 7 of the Thinking Body Revival, and we're outside to celebrate that it's Memorial Day weekend, and we have some nice weather here, even though allergies are horrendous. You see two of my favorite items from the show and from my workouts. You got the hourglass and our sledgehammer, and it's right out where I use it during my workouts. But today we're going to talk about some other old school stuff, a great tie-in with the theme of the show, and we're going to talk about how back in the 60s when John F. Kennedy was elected president, he came out with a story that was in Sports Illustrated called The Soft American, and we're going to make that available to you guys at some point soon. But he talked about the failing state of health of our youth, and it was picking up where Eisenhower had left off. Eisenhower had realized in the run-up to the Korean War how unfit our fighting men were and what to do with it. And ironically or coincidentally, it's the same problems we see today. Affluence, technology, believe it or not, screen time, but they were referring to TVs instead of phones and tablets and computers, and a more sedentary lifestyle. The more things change, the more they remain the same. But we're going to have some really cool tie-ins today with those strands of fitness and health history, and bring it to the present day. Keeping with what we've been trying to get done here in the show is we're going to show you how you do these things and use the old methods and not only feel good and survive, but thrive and be robust, not just resilient, but you want to be able to thrive under pressure and under physical duress. You want to actually be your best at that time, not just get through it. All right, well, as usual, now it's time to flip the clock and get on to the next segment. All right, everybody, so here we go with some of the real interesting historical background to this program that I've actually been using as the basis for what I do in my business for 35 plus years. And I'm going to tie it all together. It's actually some really cool stuff. I was always aware of JFK and his movement to improve our health during his presidency. And I didn't realize the roots went back into the Eisenhower administration. And I have a lot of facts and figures here today. So I'm going to be referring to my notes because I want to make sure I get this stuff right. It started after World War II, prior to the Korean War, when Eisenhower was president. And he saw a trend and we were getting less healthy. And to use the word that keeps cropping up in this historical data is we were getting soft. That was the word used at the time. I think we need to hear that a lot more today. You hear it sometimes in sports, but not enough. We were getting soft. And as I mentioned in the introduction, it's kind of funny to think of now, thinking back to back then and thinking that we were getting soft 70 years ago. It's just interesting to see how, again, I'll reuse the phrase because it's true. The more things change, the more they remain the same. In 1953, these two doctors, Dr. Hans Krauss and Bonnie Pruden, both doctors, ran what was called the Krauss-Weber test. They tested 4,000 American kids and 3,000 European kids. And it was a very simple test designed to measure basic functionality, basic fitness. 6 movements. We're going to go over those later. Straight leg sit-up, bent leg sit-up, both with your feet held. Leg lifts, 2 prone body lifts, 1 for the upper body, 1 for the lower body, and then simple bend and touch your toes. And a failure of any one of those meant a failure on the test. And what was shocking at the time was that 44% of the American kids couldn't do those tests, compared to just 8% of the European kids. So that was a drastic differential. And again, it was a call to action for Eisenhower. Again, Eisenhower's career in the military, he was aware of the stats that were involved with recruitment and how many people were ineligible or unfit for combat or unfit even to be enlisted. For World War II, 1/3 of the draftees were considered unfit. By Korea, it was half. So you're talking in span of less than 15 years, you had that huge drop off in physical capability. So we had a conference at Annapolis in 1955 calling in educators, military officers, and other, I guess, early days of the public health officials and curriculum experts. And they started to come up with the plan of attack. From that initial conference, they came up with the Presidential Conference on Youth Fitness. That was done in 1956, which again was just one more step in the direction of having an overall program. And from that, they had the President's Council on Youth Fitness, which was 1956, which again now was a more permanent group of people looking at the problem. And from that, they had the President's Council on Youth Fitness, which was 1956, which again now was a more permanent group of people looking at the problem. A big part of the solution was to have more physical education in the school system, which, believe it or not, was not common back then. Not only did he want more phys ed in school, but he wanted a better culture of sports and recreation activities that everybody could take part in, kids and adults. That he felt would go a long way to solving this problem. And again, he saw it early. And by 1960, when Kennedy took over, it wasn't any better. It's really a remarkable article, this Soft American that Kennedy wrote for the December 26th, 1960 edition of Sports Illustrated, where he lays out the problem. And I'm going to make that article available to everybody in the very near future. But I'll read some highlights or pull some highlights from that paper or that article, because it's really super interesting. Here's some great quotes from that article. The physical vigor of our citizens is one of America's most precious resources. He knew that a strong body was necessary to have a strong mind. And he talks about the ancient Greek and Roman societies and how they were both intellectually fit and physically fit. And that is what led to their expansion, their growth, their dominance, and the advance of all civilization. Again, they had the results of that fitness test to show that American kids weren't as capable. But here's another great stat. Back then, adults were only walking 2 to 3 miles a day. By the way, if you look at the stats today, adults are barely walking a half a mile. So 2.5 to 3 miles a day was considered unfit, and we're now at a rate of a half a mile a day. So you could tell we've been continuing down that very slippery slope for the last 70 years. And again, I love that technology was to blame. Cars, TV, and automation. Love it that even 70 years ago, when by today's standards some of those advances look kind of primitive, it was still responsible for a huge drop-off in our overall fitness. We talk about processed foods and convenience being a big part of this laziness that's led to people becoming soft. Another crazy stat, in 1960, only 10% of households had a TV. That's crazy when you think about how omnipresent the screens are today. The tablets, the phones, the TVs, they're every place. They're in your car. They're on the go. And again, thinking about the damage it did back then, and when you consider that today, kids that are in that 8 to 12-year-old bracket consume about 4 to 6 hours of screen time a day, and all the advertisement they're bombarded with on top of the sedentary nature of that 4 to 6 hours, you could see how we're in a disastrous time. Anyone today would be grateful to have those numbers that we were experiencing in the 1960s. Again, it's crazy to me to think that only 1 in 3 schools had physical education back in 1960, and you'll never believe how low the percentage is today. It's 4% of schools have phys ed, real phys ed. And if you're at all familiar with curriculum, the phys ed that most of those schools are offering is hardly enough to make a dent in this problem we have. I'm not sure if it's the first time a president tied fitness to national security, but I'm sure not many other presidents besides Eisenhower had breached the subject. He makes the point that unfit citizens cannot defend their country. He used a quote from the Greeks: "We train our youth not for luxury, but for hardship." And again, that's a derivative from his line that he uses in his inauguration. We do things not because they are easy, because they are hard. And again, he was setting the tone in all aspects of our life. It's interesting to see how that theme has worked its way throughout most of Kennedy's message. The PDF that I'll provide of this article that JFK wrote came from the JFK archives, and it's annotated in handwritten notes. And I'm not sure if it were the president's notes, but it's highlighted, underlined, and there are quotations written in hand in the margins and above and below the print that are very interesting and kind of highlight some of the key points of the article. It really is amazing to me. I was aware of JFK's involvement, but to see this level of commitment to it, it's great. And it ties to today, where we have RFK Jr. attempting to kind of improve us all by helping clean up the food supply and making this an important aspect of our society. I'll leave you with this quote, and we'll move on to the next segment of the show. But I think, again, it couldn't be summed up any better. Physical fitness is the basis of all activities of our society. All right, so that's super interesting. I can't wait till you guys get the copy of this article into your hands. You can read it yourself. And we're going to be moving on to the next segment. Thanks. All right, everybody. So we're going to go over the 6 exercises that make up the Krauss-Weber fitness assessment that was used back in the 50s that raised the alarm for Eisenhower. The first exercise is a straight leg sit-up. In the test, they have the feet being held, but I'm going to do it without my feet being held. So we got our second test is bent leg sit-ups with your feet being held. That I can do with the dumbbells. Straight legs, not so much. When your feet are being held, it's a lot of your hip flexors are being used. So I've always done a lot of sit-ups with my clients. Everybody progress from holding their feet to less pressure, right? So they're doing more stabilization. And then I get to the point where they're doing them on their own. I don't have back problems with my people. That's one of the biggest fitness myths there is, that somehow doing a sit-up is going to hurt your back. The next exercise is the leg raise. Very simple. Lie on your back, hands behind your head, feet together off the ground. Hold for 10 seconds. Get them about 10 inches off the ground. That was at least 10 seconds. Pretty good. The next exercise, upper back lift. For this, you have a pillow. You put it under your hips, and you'll see the rest. You got to hold it for 10 seconds. And then from there, we progress to the leg lift, which is done one at a time. You want to see proficiency in the movement, leg straight, and control the movement on both sides. And last but not least is the toe touch. Leg straight, get down to your toes or the ground. So that's it. That is the test that 44% of American kids could not perform. 44% of 4,000 American kids could not perform back during the Eisenhower presidency, sometime in the early to mid 50s. I could tell you from my experience dealing with kids of all sports activity levels, ages, we'd probably fail on most of those as well, because a lot of kids can't do a sit-up. A lot of kids could not get their upper body off the ground. I just know from doing other calisthenic movements and the like. So I recommend everybody try that. It's a good kind of historical benchmark. Okay, what was being done 70 years ago was considered basic function. I don't think you could argue with it. It's certainly as basic as you could get. And if you can't do those things, you're in a lot of trouble. We'll move on to the next segment and wrap this whole thing up. Thanks. Got a good starter refresher course on this whole concept of what I have called this roots exercise movement, combining elements of information in the field that goes back until the 20s and 30s and before, actually the 1800s, late 1800s, and then brings it up to the modern day, which I consider, maybe because it's my lifetime, 1962, and the forerunner of that, which was what Eisenhower did into what Kennedy's efforts were to bring to everyone's attention the importance of physical fitness and how we were failing. And I had a great phrase that I ran across. It was called molested by modernity, which is what was going on. Tech, affluence led to tech, which led to more automobiles, which led to more televisions, which led to more automation, which has led to a more sedentary society over time. What I've been doing in my business with my clients and myself, really a cornerstone of it is this bodyweight exercise movement program that I've coined a roots exercises that I learned when I was in junior high school. Why this is relevant is there is a high school in California. I should say there was a high school in California called La Sierra High School, which developed this amazing physical education curriculum that they instituted in their high school, in large part because of the call to arms, the call to action laid out by Eisenhower and then amplified by Kennedy, codified by LBJ when he had the President's Council of Physical Fitness and the kind of award, to the Presidential Physical Fitness Award that you could qualify for. My gym class in junior high school was built on this La Sierra model. And again, that's something else we'll talk about more as we go forward. We will actually go through their workout program, an example of what they would do with their phys ed. Their concept was really genius and ahead of its time. 15 minutes of targeted, high quality movement and exercise that were making you better, not just making you tired. So much of what we get today makes you tired. A lot of the fitness nonsense we get on social media. I saw someone posted in response to a legitimate fitness post. Actually, it was Dr. Sean Baker, who's a carnivore diet proponent, who's in amazing shape, who's a surgeon, late 50s, lives it and does it. And he had posted something about sprinting, and a typical know-nothing on social media responded, well, you should try doing burpees around the outside lane of the track until you get done with one lap. His response was perfect. That's just getting you tired. Because you could do something and make yourself tired, that doesn't make you better at anything, and it doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you fitter. Quality over quantity. The older you are, 62, and getting older every day, you don't need to kill yourself. As a matter of fact, you can't beat yourself up consistently in the gym, on the track, on the field, in any of your endeavors, because the body is not resilient enough. No matter how good of shape you're in, you're going to wear out. You're going to break down. So what we're talking about is quality over quantity. Set your watch, 30 minutes, 35 minutes, no more than 45 minutes. Go at it hard, get better at something. Don't just get tired. And that was really what was the cornerstone of this La Sierra model. Again, what I did in phys ed. Again, what I do with my clients, what I do with my teams, because kids have not gotten that. That's a lost art. It's a lost segment of our society, of our fitness history, of our health history. We've lost all that. And again, no technology, except for a clock on the wall or another kind of timer. You could do all of this without needing tech. You don't need equipment. You could go out in the field. You could go out in your backyard. You could do it in your apartment building. You could do it in a hotel room. Any of these things that I've exposed you to in the short term, and what we're going to continue to show you as we move forward, are all things that capitalize on this idea of you don't need technology, you don't need stuff, you don't need things to be in good shape and to get in good shape, and it doesn't have to end at a certain age. With what we've learned, what we know, and what we've learned, when you learn about your history, you obviously could do things to improve your present and your future. I think that's a big part of this. We can see this slide has been in effect for a long time, and all we could do is help ourselves out of it and help our families and our friends out of it. So that's the whole point of being here today. We're going to go more into this JFK article, more into the La Sierra program, more into these things in the next few shows. There's so much here that ties right into what we're doing. That's going to make your workouts better. It's going to make you in better shape. That it's exciting for me to bring this to you. It's exciting to tie all this stuff together. It's also amazing to me. I almost feel like an archaeologist finding this lost artifact, or these lost artifacts that have been buried, but that really have still been in plain sight, especially with the internet, with AI, with some of the search engines. You could go on and find a lot of this stuff. So it's an exciting time. With, again, my Patreon is going to be up in June. I'm going to have excerpts from the Recreative Physical Activities, Recreative Physical Exercises book. That's going to be up. There'll be some video explaining some of the movements in each of the 4 excerpts. We're going to have this JFK article will be up for free. That's not going to be for a paid member. That'll be available free, whether I do it through the Substack or whatever. That'll be available for free. And I just want you to remember, I have my remote training is still available. This is going to be the last time. I have one spot in the group, and I have one one-on-one spot available. We're going to change that as we go forward. My email is coachsalm@proton.me, and you can get me on X at Sal Marinello. And really, if you want to check out Instagram, it's Coach Sal's Playmakers. We'll give you a little bit more idea of my training too. There's some of my training videos are up there. So again, thanks for checking in, and we'll see you next week.